The stars have always been patient teachers, if only we had the humility to learn from them. They burn for billions of years in silence, asking nothing, giving everything. And when they finally die, they do so with such violence that their death cries echo across the universe for millennia. I have lived long enough to see 17 stars go dark. I have seen empires rise on the light of newborn suns and crumble into dust when those same suns grew old and cold. And in all my years, 4,216 rotations of my homeworld around its ancient star, I never imagined I would witness what I am about to describe.
My name is Valeth Sorn, and I am the last surviving member of the Celestine High Council. That sentence alone would have been impossible to speak 3 cycles ago. The council numbered 47 of the finest minds our civilization had ever produced, beings who had guided the Celestian dominion through 11,000 years of expansion, diplomacy, and carefully measured war. We had cataloged over 2 million species across the known reaches. We had built stations that orbited black holes, harvesting the very fabric of space-time for energy. We had seeded dead worlds with life and watched, with patient pride, as those seeds grew into forests that touched the clouds. We thought ourselves eternal. The Hollow came without warning, as such things always do. We had theorized about them, of course. What advanced civilization does not contemplate the existence of predators in the cosmic deep? But theories are comfortable things. They sit in archives, gathering dust, never quite real enough to disturb one's sleep. The Hollow made them real. They emerged from the space between galaxies, from the vast emptiness we had always assumed was simply that, empty. They were not a species in any sense we understood. They were a process, a hunger given form, and they consumed everything they touched. 17 of our core worlds fell in the first wave, not conquered, not occupied, consumed. The Hollow did not want our resources or our technology or our submission. They wanted our matter, our energy, our existence itself. They fed on reality, leaving behind nothing but void, true void, the kind that made normal space feel crowded by comparison. I remember standing in the council chamber when the reports came in. I remember the way Elder Morath's hands trembled as she read the casualty figures. 14 billion souls on Celestine Prime alone. Gone. Not dead in any way we could process, but simply erased, as if they had never been. "We must flee," someone said. I cannot remember who. Perhaps it was me. "Where?" asked Morath. And in that single word, I heard the death of hope. The Hollow were everywhere. They moved through fold space as easily as we moved through air. Our fleets, the greatest concentration of military power in the known reaches, lasted 9 days against them. 9 days, 11,000 years of technological advancement, and we could not buy ourselves more than 9 days. I fled. I am not proud of this, but I am too old and too tired for pride. I took a scout vessel and I ran, jumping from system to system, always one step ahead of the spreading darkness. I watched the beacon network go silent one by one. I listened to the final transmissions of worlds I had known and loved, desperate pleas, defiant last stands, and finally, worst of all, silence. I ran until there was nowhere left to run.
And that is how I found myself entering the Sol system, the unremarkable home of an unremarkable species we had dismissed as primitive 2 centuries ago, when our survey vessels first detected their radio signals leaking out into the void like the babbling of infants.
Humans, they called themselves. A young species, barely 300 years into their spacefaring age. They had spread to a handful of worlds in their local system and sent slow exploration vessels to a few nearby stars, but by Celestine standards, they were children. Clever children, perhaps, with a certain crude ingenuity in their engineering, but children nonetheless. We had placed them in Category 7 of our species index, monitor but do not contact. Insufficient development for meaningful diplomatic engagement. I was not seeking their help. I was seeking a place to hide, a place to die, perhaps, in whatever time remained before the Hollow found me. The Sol system was remote, unremarkable, and, I assumed, undefended. The Hollow would sweep through it eventually, but perhaps not immediately. Perhaps I would have a few cycles of peace before the end. That was my thinking as I dropped out of fold space near the orbit of their 4th planet, the red one they called Mars. I was prepared for primitive orbital stations, perhaps a few patrol vessels with crude chemical rockets. I was not prepared for what I found. The station hung in the darkness like a sleeping giant, its running lights dim and widely spaced, suggesting a structure far larger than my instruments initially reported. As my vessel's sensors adjusted, I felt the first flicker of something I had not experienced in a very long time. Surprise. The station was enormous. Not elegant, not beautiful in the way Celestine constructions were, but massive in a way that spoke of industrial determination rather than aesthetic refinement. It bristled with antennae and sensor arrays, and as I drifted closer, I detected the faint signatures of weapons systems, primitive by our standards, but present in numbers that seemed excessive. A communication channel opened before I could request one. Unidentified vessel, you have entered Sol territorial space. Please transmit identification codes and state your purpose. This is Station Argus 7. We are prepared to render assistance if required. The voice was calm, polite even, but there was something beneath the courtesy that made me hesitate before responding. A watchfulness, perhaps. A patience that felt less like hospitality and more like assessment. This is Valieth Sorn of the Celestine Dominion, I transmitted, my voice hoarse from cycles of disuse. I am requesting sanctuary. My people are gone. The pause that followed lasted perhaps 3 seconds. It felt longer. Counselor Sorn, please adjust your approach vector to heading 773 and reduce velocity to docking parameters. Medical and diplomatic teams will meet you upon arrival. Do you require immediate medical attention? I blinked at my console. You know who I am? We maintain comprehensive files on all known species and their governmental structures, Counselor. Your vessel's signature was identified upon entry to the system. We have been monitoring Celestine communications for some time and were aware of the situation. We are sorry for your losses. There was genuine sympathy in the voice. I found myself unexpectedly moved by it, this small kindness from a species I had never deigned to consider. Thank you, I said, and meant it. The docking process was efficient and unremarkable. What was remarkable was the interior of the station. I had expected cramped corridors, exposed conduits, the utilitarian ugliness of a young civilization still learning to build in space. Instead, I found myself walking through wide passages with clean lines and soft lighting, the air fresh and carefully regulated, the artificial gravity so smooth I could almost forget I was not on a planetary surface. The humans who met me were equally unexpected. Two of them, a man and a woman, both dressed in simple gray uniforms with no visible rank insignia. They introduced themselves as Commander Chen and Dr. Okonkwo, and they led me to what they called a guest suite with such matter-of-fact efficiency that I almost forgot to be afraid. "You should rest, Counselor," Dr. Okonkwo said. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes were sharp, observant. "I can offer you a mild sedative if sleep does not come easily. After what you have endured, no one would think less of you for needing assistance." "What I have endured?" I repeated, the words feeling strange in my mouth. "You speak as if you understand." She smiled, and there was something ancient in that smile, something that did not belong on the face of such a young species. "We have some experience with loss, Counselor, with survival, with the aftermath of catastrophe. Humanity learned a long time ago that trauma is not weakness. It is simply the price of living through things that should have killed you." I stared at her, this small, soft-looking creature who spoke of trauma and survival as if they were old friends. "Your species is 300 years old," I said. "What could you possibly know of catastrophe?" The smile did not waver, but something flickered behind her eyes. 300 years in space, Counselor, but we walked under open skies for 300,000 years before that. We have been surviving for a very long time. She left me alone then, and I sat in the quiet of my comfortable cell. For that is what it was, I realized, comfortable though it might be, and I wondered what I had stumbled into. The next several cycles passed in a haze of exhaustion and grief. I slept more than I had slept in decades, my body finally releasing the tension it had carried through weeks of flight. When I was awake, I was visited by a rotating cast of human officials who asked careful questions about the hollows, their movements, their capabilities, their apparent weaknesses, if any. I told them everything I knew, which was not much. No one had survived long enough to study the hollows in detail. On the fourth day, Commander Chen came to my suite with an invitation. "Counselor Sorn, if you are feeling well enough, our leadership would like to meet with you. There are matters we should discuss." I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. I had spent 4 days on this station and had seen perhaps 100 humans in total. A tiny sample, but enough to notice certain patterns. They were unfailingly polite. They smiled often and laughed easily. They moved through their environment with a casual confidence that suggested complete familiarity with every system, every protocol, every potential emergency. There was no urgency in their manner, no visible anxiety about the cosmic horror that was slowly eating the galaxy. It was, I realized, profoundly unsettling. The meeting room was simple. A long table, several chairs, a large display screen on one wall. 5 humans sat waiting for me, 3 men and 2 women, all of them older than the staff I had encountered so far. They rose when I entered, a gesture of respect, I assumed, and the woman at the head of the table extended her hand in the human greeting custom. "Counselor Sorn, I am Admiral Wei. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us. Please, sit." I sat. The Admiral resumed her seat and folded her hands on the table before her. Her face was calm, her eyes steady, and I noticed that none of the humans present had any visible weapons. The lack of defensive posture should have been reassuring. Instead, it made me think of predators so confident in their strength that they saw no need for displays of aggression. Counselor, we have reviewed the intelligence you provided. Admiral Wei began. We have also been conducting our own observations of the Hollow's movements. They are approaching the outer boundary of what we consider our sphere of influence. Based on their current trajectory, they will reach the Sol system in approximately 47 days. 47 days. The words hit me like a physical blow. I had thought I would have more time. I had thought...
Counselor? One of the men leaned forward, his expression concerned. Are you all right?
47 days, I said. You speak of it so calmly. Do you not understand what is coming? The Celestian Dominion had 11,000 years of technological development. We had fleets that could crack planets. We had weapons that could ignite the cores of stars. And we lasted 9 days. 9 days against the Hollow. Your species has had 3 centuries. You have a single system. You have no fleet, no allies, no... Counselor Sorn. Admiral Wei's voice was quiet, but it cut through my rising panic like a blade. I understand your concern. I understand that you have witnessed horrors that no being should have to witness. But I would ask you to consider something. She touched a control on the table, and the display screen behind her flickered to life. What it showed made no sense. It was a star map. The Sol system, presumably, but it was crowded with markers, thousands of markers, tens of thousands. They clustered around each planet, around the larger moons, around points in empty space that I slowly realized must be stations or platforms of some kind. The density of construction was absurd, impossible. This could not be the output of a 300-year-old civilization. This looked like the infrastructure of an empire. Counselor, humanity has not spent the last 3 centuries playing in our sandbox while the adults managed the galaxy. Admiral Wei's voice was still calm, still measured, but there was a weight to it now that had not been there before. We knew we were being watched, we knew we were being assessed, and we knew that whatever judgment the older civilizations reached, it would not be in our favor. I could not speak. I could only stare at the map, at the markers that continued to appear as the display zoomed out, revealing more and more of what should have been hidden.
We knew, the Admiral continued, that the galaxy was old and full of powers that had been playing this game since before our ancestors climbed down from the trees. We knew that kindness from such powers was unlikely, and so we prepared.
Prepared for what? I managed.
The Admiral smiled. It was a small smile, without humor, without warmth. It was the smile of something that had been waiting in the dark for a very long time, for whatever came next. In the days that followed, I learned more about humanity than the Celestine Dominion had gathered in 2 centuries of observation. And I understood, with growing unease, why we had failed to see them clearly. We had looked at humanity and seen a young species with crude technology and limited reach. We had noted their internal conflicts, their environmental struggles, their apparent inability to unify under a single government. We had concluded, not unreasonably, that they would likely destroy themselves before becoming a factor in galactic affairs.
We had not looked closely enough at their history. Commander Chen became my guide, and in a strange way, my teacher. He showed me records that humans had carefully preserved for thousands of years, records of wars and plagues and disasters that would have broken lesser species. He showed me images of cities reduced to rubble and rebuilt within a generation. He showed me the genetic scars that humanity still carried from bottleneck events that had reduced their entire population to a few thousand individuals more than once in their history. We almost went extinct 7 times before we invented writing. Chen said, with something like pride in his voice. And at least 3 times after. Ice ages, volcanic winters, plagues that killed half the population. We survived. But you were primitive then, I said. You had no technology.
No. We had each other, Chen interrupted me gently but firmly. We had the ability to cooperate, to share knowledge, to sacrifice for the group. That is what saved us. That is what has always saved us, not our tools. Our tools are just expressions of something deeper.
I thought of the Celestine Dominion, of our carefully maintained social hierarchies, our proud tradition of individual achievement, our belief that civilization was the work of exceptional minds guiding lesser beings toward enlightenment. And I wondered if we had built our greatness on a foundation of sand. The hollow, I said, changing the subject, because I was not ready to follow that thought to its conclusion. What do you intend to do about them? Chen's expression shifted slightly. What do you mean? I agreed, though I did not know what I was agreeing to. Commander Chen led me to a viewing gallery on the outer edge of the station, a long corridor with one wall entirely transparent to space. Mars hung in the distance, red and ancient, and around it. I had seen the map. I had seen the markers. But maps are abstract things. They do not prepare you for the reality. There were ships, thousands of ships. They hung in the darkness like a scattered constellation, their running lights winking in the black, their hulls dark and angular and utterly unlike anything I had seen before. No smooth curves, no elegant lines. These were machines built for a single purpose, and that purpose was written in every brutal angle of their construction. This is the 3rd Mars Defense Group, Chen said quietly. 1 of 17 in this sector. 1 of 17. I felt my legs weaken, and I braced myself against the viewport. We are not evacuating, Counselor. We are not building colony ships. We are not running. Chen's voice was steady, almost serene. We have nowhere to run to, and even if we did, running is not in our nature. It never has been. This is suicide, I whispered. The Hollow consumed the greatest military force in the known galaxy in 9 days. Your ships are impressive, but they cannot. Counselor Sorn. Chen turned to face me, and for the first time I saw something other than calm politeness in his eyes. I saw fire. I saw the same fire I had seen in the eyes of Celestian warriors in their final moments, that fierce refusal to go quietly into the dark. But where my people's fire had been the fire of desperation, of defiance in the face of inevitable defeat, this was something else. This was the fire of conviction. We know what is coming, Chen said. We have been watching the Hollow for longer than you know. We have studied their movements, their patterns, their methods of consumption. And we have been preparing, not for 3 centuries, for 300,000 years, humanity has been preparing for a fight we always knew was coming. We did not know what form it would take. We did not know when it would arrive. But we knew, in our bones, in our blood, in the deepest parts of our collective memory, that someday something would come out of the dark to kill us. He gestured at the ships floating in the void. And we knew that when it came, we would have to be ready. In the following days, I watched humanity mobilize, and I began to understand why the Celestine Dominion had been wrong about them. We had seen their internal conflicts and assumed they could not cooperate. We had missed the deeper pattern. Humans fought each other because they were practicing. For thousands of years, they had waged war upon themselves, each conflict refining their tactics, their technology, their understanding of violence as an art form.
They had burned their own cities to learn how cities burned. They had slaughtered millions of their own kind to learn how armies died.
They were not a young species prone to self-destruction. They were a species that had been training for war since before they could write. And now, faced with a true enemy for the first time in their history, they moved with a coordination that took my breath away. I watched supply convoys stream between worlds, an endless procession of cargo vessels carrying materials I could not identify. I watched soldiers, they called them Marines, drilling in the corridors, their movements precise and economical, their faces set in expressions of focused calm. I watched engineers working around the clock, assembling weapons systems that had clearly been designed long ago and stored against this very moment.
"How long have you been building these?" I asked Dr. Okonkwo, who had become my second guide during Chen's increasing absence for military duties.
She considered the question. The specific designs you see now? About 60 years. But the concepts, the underlying technologies, the manufacturing infrastructure, that goes back further, much further.
Why did you hide this from the galaxy?
She gave me a long, thoughtful look.
Counselor, your people watched our radio signals leak into space 2 centuries ago and decided we were infants. You placed us in a category of species too primitive to be worth contacting. Do you know what we learned from that?
I said nothing.
We learned that the galaxy was full of powers who would judge us by their own standards and find us wanting. Powers who would dismiss us as insignificant, or worse, see us as a threat to be eliminated before we grew too strong. So we let you see what you expected to see. We let you see the radio signals and the crude rockets and the petty squabbles. We showed you the mask.
And behind the mask?
She smiled, and again I saw that ancient thing looking out from behind her eyes. Behind the mask, Counselor, we have been getting ready, learning, growing, building. We knew that someday the mask would have to come off. We just hoped it would be on our terms.
She paused, and the smile faded. The Hollow changed that. They changed everything. When we saw what they did to the Celestian Dominion, to the most powerful civilization in the known galaxy, we knew the time for hiding was over. If we stayed hidden, we would die hidden. And that is not how humanity chooses to die.
23 days before the projected arrival of the Hollow, Admiral Wei summoned me to the command center of Station Argus 7. The room was larger than I had expected, filled with dozens of human officers monitoring displays that showed information I could not interpret. But I did not need to understand the specifics to grasp the scale of what I was seeing. The entire Sol system was represented in a massive holographic projection at the center of the room, and it was alive with movement. Ships flowed between planets like blood through veins. Stations that had been dormant for decades were coming online, their weapon systems powering up, their crews returning from civilian positions they had maintained as cover for generations.
Counselor Sorn, Admiral Wei said, rising from her command chair. Thank you for joining us. I thought you might want to see this.
She gestured at the hologram, and it zoomed outward, showing the space beyond the Sol system. Red markers appeared, hundreds of them, clustered in a pattern I recognized with a chill of horror. The Hollow have accelerated their advance, we said. They will arrive in 17 days, not 47. It seems they have sensed something worth consuming here.
17 days, I said. The words felt hollow. You have 17 days.
Yes. Wei's voice was steady. We do. She touched a control, and the hologram shifted again. Now I was looking at something else, a structure, or perhaps a network of structures arranged in a vast sphere around the sun itself. The scale was impossible. The engineering was beyond anything I had ever seen, beyond anything the Celestian Dominion had ever imagined.
This is the Prometheus Array, Wei said. We began construction 112 years ago, when our long-range sensors first detected anomalies in the intergalactic medium that we now know were the Hollows' approach. It is the largest single construction project in human history, and in 17 days it will be operational.
I stared at the hologram, trying to process what I was seeing. What does it do? Admiral Wei was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than I had ever heard it. The hollow consume matter and energy. They feed on reality itself. We cannot fight them with conventional weapons. We learned that much from watching your peoples struggle. No amount of firepower can harm something that eats firepower. So we asked ourselves a different question.
She looked at me, and there was something in her eyes that I had never seen before in a human. Something that looked almost like pity.
We asked ourselves, what does the void fear? I could not answer. I did not know the answer. I had never thought to ask the question. The answer, Wei said, is memory. The void is empty because it has forgotten what it once contained. The hollow are creatures of forgetting. They erase what they consume, leaving nothing behind. But memory is stubborn, Counselor. Memory persists. And we have learned how to make it persist in ways that even the void cannot ignore. She turned back to the hologram, to the vast structure encircling their sun. The Prometheus Array does not generate weapons. It generates memory. It takes the light of our sun and encodes it with information, the sum total of everything humanity has ever known, ever felt, ever been. Every life lived, every death mourned, every joy and sorrow and moment of grace that our species has experienced across 300,000 years of existence. And it broadcasts that memory into the fabric of reality itself, making it permanent, making it indelible. I felt tears forming in my eyes, though I had not cried in centuries. You cannot defeat them, I whispered, so you are making sure they cannot forget you. No, Counselor. Admiral Wei's voice was firm now, the softness gone. We are not just making sure they cannot forget us. We are making sure they cannot forget anyone. The Hollow have erased civilizations beyond counting. They have consumed the memories of species who lived and loved and died, leaving nothing behind but void. We are going to give those memories back. She smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. The Celestian Dominion thought we were children. You watched us from afar and saw a young species stumbling through its first steps into the cosmos. But you forgot something, Counselor. You forgot that children grow up, and you forgot that we have been watching you, too. The hologram shifted again, and now I saw something that made my hearts stop. It was a record, a complete record. 11,000 years of Celestian history, encoded in formats I recognized, preserved with a fidelity that should have been impossible for a species that had never been permitted to access our archives. We have been listening, Wei said, to your communications, your broadcasts, your distress signals. We have been recording everything we could capture, translating what we could translate, preserving what we could preserve. We could not save your people, Counselor, but we can save your memory. We can make sure that the Celestian Dominion is never forgotten. The tears were flowing freely now. I did not try to stop them. "Why?" I asked. "We dismissed you. We ignored you. We left you to face the darkness alone. Why would you do this for us?" Admiral Wei was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle.
Because that is what humans do, Counselor. We remember. We carry the memories of those who came before, even when those memories are painful, especially when they are painful. It is the only form of immortality we have ever truly believed in.
She reached out and, to my astonishment, took my hand in hers. Her fingers were warm, strong, alive.
"You are not alone anymore," she said. "Whatever happens in the next 17 days, you will never be alone again. Earth remembers, and through Earth, the void itself will remember."
The days that followed were a blur of preparation and revelation. I was given access to more and more of humanity's hidden depths, and each revelation left me more shaken than the last. I learned of the bunker networks, vast underground complexes on every world in the Sol system, designed to sustain human populations for centuries if the surface became uninhabitable. I learned of the seed vaults, genetic archives containing the DNA of every species on Earth, plus samples acquired through covert means from dozens of other worlds. I learned of the generation ships, massive vessels hidden in the outer reaches of the system, ready to carry human colonists to distant stars if all else failed. But most of all, I learned of the Remembrancers. They were a core within the human military, men and women specially trained in the arts of memory and preservation. Their job was not to fight, but to record, to observe, to document, to ensure that no matter what happened, the truth would survive. Every battle, every sacrifice, every moment of courage and cowardice and simple human endurance would be captured and preserved, encoded into the Prometheus Array's broadcast, made permanent.
"We started the tradition during our earliest wars," Dr. Okonkwo explained when I asked. "Scribes who traveled with armies, writing down what they saw. Over time, the methods changed, but the purpose remained the same. Humanity has always believed that the worst fate is not death, but oblivion. To be forgotten is to be truly gone. So we made forgetting impossible." I thought of the Celestine Dominion, of our billions of dead, erased so thoroughly that even the space they had occupied was empty. And I understood, finally, why the humans were not afraid. They had already won the only victory that mattered to them. Whether they lived or died in the coming battle, they would be remembered. Their story would persist. The void might take their bodies, but it could never take their meaning. It was, I realized, an entirely different way of understanding existence. The Celestian had always measured our worth in power, in territory, in the tangible markers of civilization. Humans measured theirs in stories, and stories, unlike empires, could not be destroyed by force. On the 10th day before the Hollow's arrival, I was summoned to a final meeting with Admiral Wei. The command center was busier than ever. Every station manned, every display active. The holographic projection showed the approaching Hollow Swarm, a darkness that moved through space like a living thing, consuming the stars as it came. It was close now, close enough that the outer sensor platforms could track individual entities within the swarm. There were millions of them, perhaps billions.
"Counselor Sorn," Wei said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what we were all seeing. "We have a decision to make, and I want your input."
My input. I could not hide my surprise. I am a refugee, a survivor. What could I possibly contribute to your strategy?
You have seen them, Wei said simply. You have seen what they do. You carry memories that no one else in this system possesses, and you have a perspective on this situation that we lack.
She gestured to the hologram, and it shifted to show a tactical overlay. Our current plan calls for a defensive posture. We draw the holo into the inner system toward the Prometheus array and engage them as they approach. The array will be fully operational by then, broadcasting at maximum power. Even if we fail to stop them, the memory broadcast will persist, encoded in the fabric of space-time itself. The holo cannot consume what has already been woven into reality. I nodded, following the logic. And my input? There is another option. Wei's voice was carefully neutral. A more aggressive option. Instead of waiting for them to come to us, we could go to them, strike first, try to disrupt their formation before they reach the inner system. That would be suicide, I said immediately. The holo cannot be fought directly. Every engagement your people fought, Wei interrupted gently. With respect, Counselor, your people fought the way you had always fought. You used the weapons and tactics that had won you every war for 11,000 years. But you had never faced an enemy like this. You had never needed to. She touched a control and the hologram shifted again. Now it showed something I did not recognize. A weapon, perhaps, but unlike any weapon I had seen before. It looked almost organic, a twisting shape that seemed to shift and change even as I watched. We call it the Orpheus Protocol, Wei said. It is based on our understanding of how the holo function. They consume matter and energy, yes, but they also consume information, meaning, memory. They feed on the significance of what they destroy, not just its physical substance. The Orpheus Protocol generates anti-memory. It creates patterns of information that are toxic to the holo, recursive loops, paradoxes, self-referential structures that cannot be digested or erased. Instead of trying to kill them, we poison them. We give them something they cannot swallow.
My mind reeled. How is that possible? The holo consume everything. They
consume everything they understand. Wei's eyes were bright now, alive with something that might have been excitement or might have been madness. But they do not understand us. They do not understand how we think, how we feel, how we remember. Our minds are alien to them in ways that your people's minds were not. The Celestine dominion, for all its greatness, thought in patterns the holo could recognize, linear, logical, hierarchical. But humanity... She smiled, and there was nothing gentle in it now. Humanity thinks in myths, in metaphors, in dreams that make no rational sense but carry meaning beyond measure. We are chaos wrapped in flesh, Counselor. We are storytelling animals who believe in impossible things, and that makes us very, very hard to digest. I sat in silence for a long moment, processing what I had heard. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was the most human thing I had ever encountered. You are asking me whether you should deploy this weapon, I said finally. I am asking for your perspective, Wei corrected. You have more experience with the holo than anyone alive in this system. You have seen what they do, how they move, how they consume. I trust my people and our science, but I would be a fool to ignore relevant expertise. I closed my eyes and thought of Celestine Prime, of the moment the holo had arrived, the moment our defenses had failed, the moment I had fled. I thought of the billions of my people erased from existence in the span of hours. I thought of the silence that had followed, the terrible empty silence of a galaxy that was slowly forgetting everything it had ever known. And I thought of the humans,
This strange, impossible species that had hidden in plain sight for centuries, preparing for a battle that should have been unwinnable. They had built their civilization on stories. They had made remembrance into a weapon. And now they were asking me, the last survivor of a people who had dismissed them as primitives, whether they should risk everything on a gamble that defied all rational analysis.
I opened my eyes.
Deploy it, I said. Deploy everything you have. If you are going to fight the void, fight it on your terms. Tell it a story it cannot forget.
Admiral Wei nodded slowly. Thank you, Counselor. She turned to her officers. Initiate the Orpheus Protocol. Full deployment. All units.
The command center erupted into activity, officers calling out orders, displays shifting to show new tactical configurations. I watched it all unfold with a strange sense of peace. Whatever happened next, I had made my choice. I had cast my lot with humanity. And as I watched them prepare to face the darkness, I found myself believing, truly believing, that they might actually win. The battle began at 0347 hours on the 7th day, as the outer edge of the hollow swarm reached the orbit of Neptune. I watched from the command center of Station Argus 7, surrounded by human officers whose faces showed no fear, only concentration. The holographic display showed the human fleet moving to intercept, thousands of ships arranged in formations I did not recognize, broadcasting signals I could not interpret. And at the heart of the formation, the Orpheus protocols, dozens of them, the twisted, shifting shapes I had seen in the tactical display, now deployed in physical form. They pulsed with an energy that made my scales itch, a wrongness that seemed to distort the space around them. Contact in 30 seconds, someone announced.
Admiral Wei stood at the center of the room, her hands clasped behind her back, her eyes fixed on the display. She had not moved in hours. She had not needed to. Her officers knew their jobs, and she trusted them to do them.
That trust, I realized, was the heart of humanity's strength. Not their technology, impressive as it was, not their weapons or their tactics or their hidden preparations. It was their ability to believe in each other, to coordinate without coercion, to function as a single organism with billions of cells. The Celestian Dominion had never understood that. We had built our civilization on hierarchy, on the assumption that some minds were better than others and deserved to lead. Humans built theirs on trust, on the radical belief that every individual had value and every contribution mattered. It was inefficient. It was messy. It was often contradictory and always chaotic. And it was unstoppable. "Contact," the voice announced, and the battle was joined. I cannot describe what I saw in terms that would make sense to anyone who was not there. The Hollow did not fight the way physical beings fought. They did not exchange fire or maneuver for position. They simply advanced, consuming everything in their path, growing larger and stronger with each thing they consumed. But the human fleet did not try to stop them with force. Instead, they engaged them, talked to them. The Orpheus protocols broadcast their impossible patterns directly into the heart of the swarm, and for the first time in recorded history, the Hollow hesitated. I saw it happen. I saw the leading edge of the swarm slow, then stop, then begin to twist in on itself. The Hollow were trying to consume the patterns, trying to digest the information being fed to them, and they were failing. The anti-memories were doing exactly what Wei had promised, poisoning them from within, creating recursive loops that they could not escape.
"It's working," someone said, and there was wonder in their voice. But it was not enough. The swarm was vast, billions of entities spread across light hours of space. The Orpheus protocols could not reach them all, and even as the front of the swarm faltered, the rest continued to advance, flowing around the disrupted portions like water around a stone.
"They're adapting," Wee said. Her voice was calm. "They're learning to filter the signal."
"We have secondary protocols ready," an officer replied. "Different patterns. We can do it."
The battle raged for hours. Each time the Hollow adapted to a new pattern, humanity deployed another. Each time the swarm found a way around their defenses, the fleet adjusted, reformed, tried something new. It was a chess game played at the speed of light, with the stakes being the survival of everything that had ever existed.
And slowly, impossibly, humanity began to win.
Not through force, not through superior firepower, but through sheer, stubborn, irrational persistence. They threw everything they had at the Hollow, every story, every myth, every dream and nightmare that humanity had ever conceived. They weaponized their own history, their own suffering, their own endless capacity for meaning-making.
And the Hollow choked on it. By the end of the first day, the swarm's advance had stopped completely. By the end of the second, it had begun to retreat. By the end of the third, something extraordinary happened.
The Hollow began to remember.
I do not know how else to describe it. The patterns humanity was broadcasting were not just toxic to the Hollow, they were infectious. They spread through the swarm like a virus, carrying with them the memories of everything the Hollow had consumed over countless millennia. Civilizations that had been erased began to resurface in the Hollow's consciousness. Species that had been forgotten for millions of years suddenly existed again, their stories embedded in the fabric of the swarm itself.
The Hollow had made a fatal mistake. They had consumed humanity's memories of the Celestine Dominion. They had consumed humanity's records of every species they had watched and studied and preserved. And now those memories were multiplying inside them, filling the void they had created, making it impossible to forget.
The void was remembering.
And it was tearing itself apart.
On the 5th day of the battle, the swarm collapsed. Not gradually, but all at once, as if a critical threshold had been crossed. The billions of entities that had threatened to consume the galaxy turned on each other, overwhelmed by the memories they could not digest, the stories they could not silence. I watched the holographic display as the red markers representing the Hollow flickered and died, one by one, then in groups, then in waves. The sensors could not interpret what was happening, but I understood. The Hollow were not dying. They were remembering. They were becoming what they had consumed, their identity dissolving into the collective memory of everything they had ever destroyed. And at the center of it all, burning like a beacon, was the Prometheus array, the sum total of human memory, encoded in the light of their sun, broadcasting into the void and demanding to be remembered. Earth's name. That was what the void was remembering. Not just humanity, but everything humanity had preserved, every story they had collected, every fragment of every civilization they had watched and recorded and refused to let die. The void was remembering Earth's name, and through Earth's name, it was remembering everything.
Admiral Wei stood motionless as the last of the Hollow signatures faded from the display. Her face was unreadable, but there were tears on her cheeks.
"It's over," someone said. "No," Wei replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's just beginning." She turned to face me, and I saw something in her eyes I had never seen in a human before. Peace. True peace. The kind that comes not from the absence of struggle, but from the knowledge that the struggle has meaning.
The memories are spreading, she said. The Prometheus Array's broadcast is carrying them outward, into the void, into the spaces the hollow once dominated. Every civilization they ever consumed is being remembered now. Every species they ever erased is being restored, not in body, but in meaning, in story, in the only form of immortality that truly matters.
I fell to my knees. I could not help it. The weight of what I was witnessing was too great to bear standing. "The Celestine Dominion," I said, and I could not keep my voice from breaking. "My people."
Your people are not gone, Counselor. Wei knelt beside me, and her hand found mine again. They are remembered. We made sure of it. Every record we could capture, every story we could preserve, every fragment of every life, it's all there, in the broadcast. The Celestine Dominion will exist as long as there is anyone, anywhere, to remember it.
I wept. I wept for my lost people, for my fallen civilization, for the billions of souls who had been erased from existence. But I also wept for something else, for the strange, impossible species that had saved not just my life, but my legacy, for the children of Earth who had taken it upon themselves to remember the galaxy, even when the galaxy had dismissed them as primitives.
For humanity, who had proven that the measure of a species was not in its power or its age or its technological advancement, but in its capacity to remember, to preserve, to carry forward the stories of those who came before.
The void had tried to consume everything. It had tried to erase the meaning from the universe, to leave nothing behind but empty space and silent stars.
But the void had made a terrible miscalculation.
It had forgotten that Earth remembered.
And now, thanks to Earth, the void would never forget again. I remain with the humans now. I have no people to return to, no home world, no civilization. But I have something I never expected to find in the aftermath of annihilation: purpose. They have made me a remembrancer, the first non-human to hold the title. My job is to ensure that the memory of the Celestian Dominion is preserved accurately, that the stories of my people are told as they truly were, not as they might be imagined by those who never knew them. It is not a grand purpose. There are no fleets under my command, no councils to lead, no great decisions to make. I am simply a keeper of memory, a guardian of stories that might otherwise be lost. But I have learned from the humans that this is the greatest purpose of all.
The Prometheus Array still broadcasts day and night, encoding the light of Earth's sun with the memories of 1,000 civilizations. The signal spreads outward at the speed of light, carrying its cargo of stories into the void. In 1,000 years, it will reach the edge of the galaxy. In 1,000,000 years, it will touch other galaxies. In 1,000,000,000 years, it will still be traveling, still carrying the memories of everyone who ever lived and died and mattered.
The hollow are gone, dissolved into the very memories they tried to consume. In their place there is something new, a distributed consciousness made up of all the civilizations they destroyed, preserved not in matter, but in meaning. It is not alive exactly, but it is not dead either. It is remembered. And in the end, that is the only thing that truly matters. I stand at the viewport now, watching Earth's sun burn in the distance. It is an ordinary star, yellow, middle-aged,
unremarkable by any astronomical standard. But to me, it is the most beautiful thing in the universe, because it is not just a star, it is a beacon, a lighthouse, a promise.
It is the voice of a species that refused to be forgotten, and in refusing, ensured that nothing would ever be forgotten again.
I think of the title the humans gave to their great project, and I understand now what it means. The void remembered Earth's name, not because Earth was the greatest or the strongest or the oldest, but because Earth remembered everyone else. Because when the darkness came to consume all meaning, Earth stood in its path and said, "No, you will not erase us. You will not erase them. You will remember, or you will choke on remembering."
And the void choked.
And the void remembered.
And now, because of one small, stubborn, impossible species from an unremarkable world orbiting an ordinary star, the void will never be empty again. I close my eyes and let the starlight wash over me. Somewhere out there, the memories of the Celestine Dominion are traveling through the cosmos, carried on the wings of light, preserved forever in the fabric of reality itself. My people are gone, but they are not forgotten. They will never be forgotten, not as long as humans remember, not as long as the Prometheus Array burns, not as long as stories are told and meaning is made and the void is forced to remember what it tried to destroy. The humans have a saying. I have heard it many times in my years among them, and I have come to understand its power. They say it when they gather to mourn, when they stand at graves, when they remember those who have passed. As long as we remember them, they are never truly gone. I used to think this was sentiment, wishful thinking, the desperate hope of a species too young to understand the finality of death. I know better now. The humans were never young. They were never primitive. They were simply patient, waiting for the rest of the galaxy to understand what they had always known. Memory is stronger than death. Stories outlast stars, and a species that refuses to forget is a species that cannot be destroyed.